The knock on the door came just as the winter wind howled through the narrow hallway of the old Upper West Side apartment. Madeline Carter, 5 months pregnant and exhausted from another double shift, froze with her hand still on the light switch. She knew that knock. It carried a rhythm she once waited for every evening, the rhythm of a man who had promised forever, then disappeared the moment forever became inconvenient. Brandon stood there when she opened the door, shoulders slumped, wearing the same leather jacket he used to flaunt on social media, except this time, it didn't make him look powerful. It made him look empty. Behind Madeline, their 8-year-old daughter, Chloe, peeked out, clutching her worn-out teddy bear. "Madeline, can we talk?" Brandon muttered, forcing a smile that trembled at the edges, the kind of smile men wear when they've run out of places to hide. She didn't answer. She didn't have to. Her silence told the whole story, the months he left her pregnant and alone, the photos of him vacationing with Jasmine plastered across Instagram, the loneliness she swallowed just to keep going. Brandon stepped inside anyway. "I made mistakes," he whispered. "Jasmine wasn't who I thought she was. She left when money got tight. I didn't know where else to go." For the first time since he spoke, Chloe lifted her head. Her voice was small but sharp enough to slice the air in half. "Dad?" she asked. Brandon knelt, hopeful. "Yeah, sweetheart?" Chloe tilted her head, innocence wrapped around something far more devastating. "Does your model still love broke men?" The hallway went silent. Brandon's face drained of color. Madeline's breath caught, and then someone else stepped into view behind him. Madeline didn't answer Chloe's question. She couldn't. The hallway was too small to hold the weight of those words, and too cold to contain the truth of the months that had come before this moment. The truth began the night she told Brandon she was pregnant again. He had just come home from a business networking event, still smelling faintly of cologne that wasn't hers. She remembered standing in their kitchen, holding the positive test like it was a fragile promise. "Brandon, we're having another baby." For a split second, he smiled. Then the smile faded, replaced by something she couldn't name at the time. Dread? Disappointment? Or maybe the realization that fatherhood didn't fit the lifestyle he was chasing. Within 2 weeks, Jasmine appeared on his social media. First as a colleague, then as a creative partner, then as a woman who lived in hotel rooms with marble bathtubs and rooftop views, the kind Brandon never offered to his own family. Madeline remembered lying awake at night, one hand over her belly, listening to the city hum, while Brandon's side of the bed stayed cold. She told herself he was stressed, overwhelmed, lost, but the truth came swiftly. He left on a Thursday morning, suitcase in hand. No fight, no explanation, just a passing comment. "Don't make this harder than it is, Mads. I need space. And Jasmine understands the life I want." Space, that's what he called it. Space meant silence. Space meant grocery bills she couldn't cover. Space meant Chloe asking why Daddy never called back. Space meant walking to prenatal appointments alone while New York's winter wind cut through her thin coat. Space meant choosing between paying the electric bill and buying vitamins her doctor insisted she needed. She worked double shifts, sometimes triple, stepping carefully across icy sidewalks with swollen ankles, praying she wouldn't slip. She hid her shaking hands under her desk at work, playing it off as fatigue. But the worst part wasn't the exhaustion or the loneliness. It was the moment her bank card declined at the pharmacy, and she learned Brandon had moved every account into his name for safety. Safety? For who? Her heart cracked that day. A kind of silent breaking that no one saw except Chloe, who wrapped small arms around her mother's waist and whispered, "Mom, we'll be okay. I'll help." And she did help, more than any child ever should. Now, back in the hallway, Brandon reached for Madeline's arm as if he had the right. "Mads, please. I didn't know where else to go." Madeline stepped back, because behind him, just emerging from the stairwell, stood a man she never expected to see at her door, Sebastian Hayes. And he looked directly at Brandon as if he already knew everything. "Is this the man who left you?" Sebastian Hayes wasn't supposed to be standing in the dim hallway of Madeline's aging apartment building. He belonged to glass towers on Park Avenue, to chauffeured Mercedes sedans, to boardrooms with marble tables. Yet here he was, in a place that smelled faintly of old paint and radiator heat, looking at her with a calm, steady gaze that made Brandon shift uneasily. "Mr. Hayes, why are you here?" Madeline asked, her voice cracking from shock more than fear. "I came to drop off the documents you left at the office," he replied. "You weren't answering your email." His eyes briefly lowered to her pregnant belly. "I was concerned." Concerned. A word she hadn't heard from a man in months. Brandon scoffed. "So this is your boss? You didn't tell me he made house calls." Madeline stiffened. She wasn't ready for this moment, not like this, not with her personal life spilling into her work life. She stepped aside to block Brandon's view of Chloe, who watched everything silently, her teddy bear gripped tightly. Surviving Manhattan as a single mother was already brutal. Doing it while pregnant felt like balancing on a tightrope over traffic. Every day demanded choices: rent or groceries, prenatal vitamins or subway fare, winter coat for Chloe or replacing her own shoes that had worn thin at the seams. She remembered waking at 4:30 a.m., her lower back screaming, and forcing herself into the cold to catch the downtown train. She remembered keeping saltines in her bag to calm the nausea between meetings. She remembered how the cold air bit her skin as she pushed through crowds of people who didn't even see her. But she kept going. She kept going because Chloe needed lunch money. She kept going because the baby deserved stability. She kept going because stopping meant breaking. And she refused to break. "Is everything all right here?" Sebastian asked, his voice low but edged with something sharper, something protective. Brandon stepped forward, trying to reclaim space he no longer owned. "This is a family matter. You can leave." Sebastian didn't move. His eyes remained on Madeline. "Do you want me to leave?" Her breath trembled. For the first time, someone was giving her a choice instead of taking everything away. "No," she whispered. "Stay." Brandon's expression darkened, a flash of anger crossing his face. Chloe took a small step behind Sebastian, as if she instinctively recognized safety when she saw it. And then, from inside the apartment, something crashed to the floor, loud, sharp, unexpected. Chloe gasped. Madeline's eyes widened, because that sound didn't come from them. Someone else was inside the apartment. The crash from inside the apartment froze everyone in place. Madeline's heart jumped into her throat, but before she could move, a small orange blur shot through the doorway, her cat, Milo, sprinting out with a toppled lamp trailing in his panic. Chloe sighed in relief and scooped him up, burying her face in his fur. It wasn't danger, just Milo being Milo. But the moment shattered whatever false confidence Brandon still carried. His shoulders sagged as if even the universe was tired of pretending on his behalf. When he looked up, desperation spilled through every crack in his facade. "Madeline, you don't understand what happened," he began. "Jasmine wasn't who I thought she was." Sebastian stood quietly, but the look in his eyes said he'd heard variations of this story many times from many men who wreaked havoc and only regretted it when the glitter faded. "It started small," Brandon said, rubbing the back of his neck. "She wanted nicer dinners, weekends away, new jewelry, nothing crazy at first." But his voice trembled. "Then she wanted things I couldn't give. Private flights, luxury hotel suites, and she kept meeting people who could give her more." Madeline remembered the pictures. Jasmine floating in infinity pools. Jasmine perched next to champagne towers at rooftop parties. Jasmine wearing gowns that cost more than their rent. And Brandon, smiling like a man who believed he belonged in that world. "What did you expect?" Madeline asked softly. "She's 26. You were financing a fantasy." He flinched. "I wasn't financing anything. Not at first." Then he swallowed. "But things changed. She told me she could help me get into circles that mattered. Investors. People with real money. She said all I needed was to look the part. That explained the designer clothes he never used to wear. The watches. The dinners he pretended were business meetings. "How did you pay for all that?" Sebastian asked, voice calm but cutting. Brandon didn't meet his eyes. "Credit. Loans. Favors. I thought I'd land a big deal before anything caught up." And then his voice cracked in a way Madeline had never heard. "The truth is, Jasmine left me for a man who actually has money, someone who didn't have to pretend." He looked at Madeline, then truly looked as if seeing the destruction he had left behind for the first time. "I lost everything," he whispered. "Every account, every card. I just need a place to figure things out." Madeline inhaled sharply, because she finally understood what he wanted. He hadn't come home out of love. He'd come back because he had nowhere else to go. And before she could respond, Chloe tugged her sleeve and whispered, "Mom, someone's coming up the stairs." Madeline turned and saw a familiar pair of heels she prayed she would never see again. The heels clicking up the stairwell echoed like warning bells. Slow, deliberate, confident, Madeline felt the air tighten as Jasmine Vale emerged into the hallway, wearing a white faux fur coat and sunglasses, even though it was well past sunset. She looked every bit the social media goddess she portrayed online, until you noticed the slight puffiness around her eyes or the hair she'd pinned too quickly, as if rushing. "Oh," Jasmine said coolly, removing her glasses. "So you did come here." Her gaze slid to Brandon with a mix of annoyance and triumph. "I figured you'd run back to your family once the Amex stopped working." Brandon's jaw clenched. Jasmine, not here. But she ignored him completely. Her eyes locked onto Madeline, studying her swollen belly, the tiredness in her shoulders, the way she held Chloe protectively behind her. For a second, a single, fleeting second, Jasmine's expression softened, almost guilt-ridden. "You didn't tell me she was pregnant," she said quietly. Madeline didn't answer. It wasn't her job to fill in the blanks of Brandon's lies. Sebastian stepped forward, then, calm as still water. He had the presence of someone who didn't need to raise his voice to dominate a room. His suit was charcoal black, his posture straight, his eyes assessing Jasmine with a businessman's cold precision. "And you must be Jasmine Vale," he said. She blinked. "Do I know you?" "No," he replied. "But I know the type." Jasmine stiffened. Brandon looked ready to crawl out of his own skin. Sebastian continued, his tone almost polite. "The type who trades affection for access, who burns through credit cards faster than trust, who abandons the moment profit disappears." Jasmine's lips parted in shock, then she let out a shaky laugh. "Wow, you're her boss? No wonder she plays the martyr." Madeline felt heat rise in her cheeks, not from shame, but from the injustice of it. Jasmine had taken so much already. Her peace, her marriage, her sense of worth. But now, seeing her up close, Madeline noticed something new. Jasmine wasn't glowing. She wasn't radiant. She wasn't even confident. She was scared. And that fear only deepened when she finally turned back to Brandon. "You didn't tell me the investors pulled out," she whispered, "or that your accounts were frozen. You told me everything was temporary." Then her voice dropped lower, almost panicked. "Tell me you still have something left. Anything. Because I can't." She cut herself off when she saw Chloe watching her like a tiny judge. Jasmine swallowed hard. "Brandon, please tell me you didn't lose the money I gave you." Madeline froze. "Money she gave him?" Sebastian's head tilted, his eyes narrowing. "Brandon," he asked softly, "what else have you been hiding?" Brandon backed away, breath quickening. And then Chloe tugged on Madeline's sleeve and whispered, "Mom, I think Dad stole something." Madeline turned slowly toward Brandon just as he made a run for the stairwell. Madeline didn't chase Brandon when he bolted down the stairwell. She couldn't. Her legs were shaking, her breath uneven, and the weight of the baby pressed mercilessly against her ribs. All she could do was grip the doorframe and force herself not to collapse. "Mom?" Chloe whispered, clutching Milo tightly. "Are you okay?" Madeline nodded, but the nod was a lie. Nothing about her life felt okay anymore. Not the bills overdue on the kitchen counter, not the empty space where a partner should have been. Not the exhaustion that lived deep in her bones, a heaviness that felt older than she was. Sebastian stepped closer, concern flickering across his face. "You need to sit," he said gently. But Madeline shook her head. I can't. I have to finish the event files tonight. The deadline is tomorrow morning." She remembered the warning email from her supervisor, polite on the surface, ruthless underneath. "Any more delays, and we will have to reevaluate your position." It wasn't fair. She was juggling pregnancy, single motherhood, and the quiet storm Brandon had left behind. But fairness didn't pay rent in Manhattan. Jasmine lingered near the stairwell, arms crossed. "Looks like you're still drowning, sweetie," she said, though her voice lacked its usual venom. It wavered. "Guess some people just aren't built for pressure." Madeline wanted to argue. She wanted to scream. But instead, a dizzy wave rolled through her vision, washing everything in white static. The hallway spun. The baby kicked hard, as if reminding her she wasn't the only one suffering. "Mom!" Chloe cried. Sebastian caught Madeline by the shoulders before she fell. She felt the warmth of his hands, the steadiness of his grip, the contrast between his calm and her unraveling. "You can't keep going like this," he said, voice low but firm. You're carrying too much. She tried to laugh, but it cracked. I don't have a choice. Sebastian held her gaze with a quiet insistence. You always have a choice. You just haven't been offered the right one yet. Madeline's breath shook. Her vision blurred again, not from dizziness this time, but from something far more painful: humiliation. She hated breaking in front of people. She hated needing help. She hated that Brandon had pushed her to this edge. I have to get this work done, she whispered again, as if repeating it could hold her world together. But then her phone vibrated. One message. From her supervisor. Madeline opened it with trembling fingers. It read, "We need to discuss your performance. Come in, first thing tomorrow. This cannot wait." Her heart stopped. Sebastian saw her expression and stepped closer. "Madeline, what is it?" She swallowed hard. I think I'm about to lose my job." And then a second notification appeared, even worse than the first. Madeline stared at her phone as the second notification loaded. Her pulse thudded in her ears, her breath catching against her ribs. She expected another warning from work, maybe even a termination notice sent prematurely. But the sender's name made her blink twice. Hayes Media Group, Executive Office. She opened it slowly. "Dear Miss Carter, we received your daughter's message. Mr. Hayes has requested immediate review of your file. Please expect follow-up instructions." Her stomach dropped. "My daughter's what?" she whispered, barely forming the words. Chloe shifted nervously, hugging Milo tighter. "Mom, please don't be mad." Madeline knelt slowly, carefully, hand on her pregnant belly, and lifted Chloe's chin. "Sweetheart, what did you do?" Chloe's eyes shimmered, but her voice was steady. "I emailed Mr. Hayes. I found his address on your work papers. I told him you work too hard. I told him you're tired and pregnant, and nobody helps you." Her voice cracked. "I told him you're the best at your job, but they never see it." Madeline felt the words strike deep, gentle, piercing, heartbreaking. Chloe continued. "I told him you're trying so hard to keep us safe, and I asked him if he could help you. Just a little." A wave of emotion surged through Madeline so fast it nearly knocked her over. She looked at Sebastian, who hadn't moved, but something warm, almost human, softened his otherwise steel-blue gaze. "You read that email?" Madeline whispered. "I did," he answered, "and I read it twice." Then, with a gentleness that contrasted sharply with his intimidating presence, he added, "Your daughter sees your worth. That's more than most people ever get." Madeline's throat tightened. Jasmine rolled her eyes, but even she seemed thrown off by the sincerity in the air. Sebastian continued, "I reviewed your performance record. You've been carrying your entire department for months." He paused. "And they've been ignoring it." Madeline's breath thinned. "So what happens now?" Sebastian glanced at his phone as another alert came through. "It seems your supervisor is requesting to meet at 8 a.m. tomorrow." His jaw tightened. "He's also copied me." Jasmine blinked. "Wait, why would a department head copy the CEO on an employee issue?" Sebastian turned to Madeline. "Because I asked him to." A quiet shock rippled through the hallway. Madeline felt the first flicker of hope in weeks. But then Chloe tugged her sleeve again. "Mom, that's not all." Madeline frowned. "What do you mean?" Chloe pulled a folded piece of paper from her pocket. "I didn't just email him." Madeline unfolded it and froze. It was a loan notice. Addressed to her. Signed not by her, but in handwriting she recognized. Brandon's. She looked up sharply, but Brandon was nowhere in sight. And then, a heavy knock echoed through the stairwell below. Police voices called his name. The police voices, echoing up the stairwell, rattled the air like a warning from fate itself. Madeline clutched the loan notice with trembling hands, her pulse racing as if her body already knew the truth she didn't want to say out loud. Brandon had forged her signature. And now the debt collectors and apparently the police were circling. Sebastian stepped closer, his expression sharpening as he examined the document. "This is serious fraud," he said quietly. "Your name is on the hook for $15,000. Madeline felt her knees weaken. "I didn't even know he took out a loan. I can't pay that. I can barely keep the lights on." Jasmine let out a small gasp, eyes widening. "Brandon told me he needed that money for an investment opportunity. I gave him half of it. I didn't know She broke off, suddenly pale. Sebastian exhaled slowly, calculating. "All right, Madeline," he said gently, "I can help you navigate this, but tomorrow will be critical." She blinked. "Tomorrow? You're meeting with your supervisor," he reminded her. "You're walking into a room where they think you're replaceable." He paused, voice steady and grounding. "I know better." Madeline looked down, overwhelmed. Her job was the last strand holding her life together, and now that strand felt ready to snap. Sebastian continued, "You've been producing some of the strongest work in the department. You've saved projects that should have fallen apart. You're organized, intuitive, and you don't crack under pressure, even when you should." Madeline swallowed hard. Hearing someone acknowledge her value felt foreign. "I'm assigning you to a new project," Sebastian said. "A major client event at the Plaza. High stakes, high visibility. If you succeed, and I believe you will, it gives you leverage your supervisor can't ignore." She stared at him, stunned. "Why would you trust me with something that important?" He met her eyes without hesitation. "Because you've been carrying the weight of 3 people alone. If you can survive that, you can manage a room full of executives." Chloe smiled proudly. "See, Mom? I told you people would see how good you are." For the first time in weeks, Madeline felt the faint glow of hope, fragile but real. Jasmine shifted awkwardly, glancing toward the stairwell as the police voices drew closer. Her voice trembled. "You guys, he's in real trouble. Brandon isn't stable right now." Madeline's breath caught. "What do you mean?" Jasmine hesitated, eyes darting between them. "Before he ran, he told me he still has one more plan. Something big, something he said would fix everything." Sebastian stiffened. "What kind of plan?" Jasmine swallowed hard. "I think he meant to involve you, Madeline." And then, the stairwell door burst open. The stairwell door slammed open with a metallic bang, and Brandon stumbled back into the hallway, breathless, pale, eyes darting in every direction like a cornered animal. The police voices had quieted, meaning he'd managed to outrun them temporarily. But the fear chasing him was unmistakable. When he saw Madeline still standing there, leaning against the wall for balance, something flickered across his face, relief mixed with entitlement, as if her presence alone meant safety. "Madeline," he gasped, rushing toward her. "Listen, I can explain everything. You have to let me stay here, just for a few days." Sebastian stepped between them before Brandon could get close. "She doesn't have to let you do anything." Brandon's lip curled. "Of course she does. She's my wife." Madeline straightened, her voice steady despite the tremor in her hands. "Ex-wife, Brandon, you signed the papers. You made your choice." Chloe moved closer to her mother, Milo still tucked beneath her arm. "Dad, you left us." Brandon ignored the child's words, too focused on rebuilding the fantasy he had created in his head. "Madeline, I know I messed up. But Jasmine, she used me. She promised connections, fame, opportunities. She lied." Jasmine scoffed. "You lied first." Brandon shot her a glare before turning back to Madeline, softening his tone. "I want to come home." The word sent a cold shock through her. Home. As if home were a revolving door he could walk through whenever the world spat him out. "You didn't want a family," Madeline whispered. "You wanted a spotlight." He winced but pressed on, desperate. "Come on, Mads, we can work this out. The baby, our baby, they need a father." The hallway felt suddenly too quiet. Madeline's heart clenched, not because she wanted him back, but because she finally understood he only returned when he needed saving, not when she did. "You don't get to walk back into our lives because yours fell apart," she said softly. "I'm done being your safety net." Brandon's expression twisted. "You think you can do this without me? You can barely keep your job. Your supervisor practically wants you gone, and you're pregnant. You need me." Sebastian's voice cut through the air like steel. "No, Brandon, she needs peace." Brandon ignored him. His gaze locked onto Madeline, frantic and pleading. "Please, just let me stay here tonight. I have nowhere else." Madeline opened her mouth to speak, but the lights in the hallway flickered. Once, twice, then everything went black. Chloe screamed, and in the darkness, someone grabbed Madeline's arm. The hallway went dark for only a second, but it felt like an eternity. When the lights flickered back on, Madeline found Sebastian gripping her arm, not in fear, but to steady her. Chloe clung to his sleeve, wide-eyed. Brandon stood frozen, as though the blackout had peeled back his last layer of dignity. But Jasmine smiled. Not a warm smile, a victorious smile. Well, she said lightly, brushing hair from her eyes, since we're all sharing truths tonight, I have something you'll want to see. Madeline tensed. Jasmine, not now. Oh, I think now is perfect. She reached into her coat and pulled out her phone. I didn't mean for this to go public, Jasmine added, though her voice betrayed delight, but I figured you should see what Brandon was doing while you were home, you know, pregnant. She tapped the screen. A video began to play. Madeline heard the music before she saw the image. A rooftop party somewhere in Midtown, neon lights spilling across the night sky. Then Brandon appeared on screen, laughing with Jasmine, spinning her around while champagne splashed from their glasses. He looked carefree, weightless, alive. He kissed her, deeply, passionately, like a man who had no family, no responsibilities, no pregnant wife crying alone at home. But that wasn't the part that shattered Madeline. It was Jasmine, in the video, sitting on Brandon's lap, leaning into the camera with a mocking grin. To the woman who thinks she still has him, Jasmine said in the recording, don't worry, we're taking good care of him. Maybe you should focus on the kids you already have. He's mine now. A knife through the heart would have been kinder. Chloe gasped and turned away. Sebastian's jaw tightened violently. Even Brandon looked horrified, as if seeing himself for the first time. Jasmine, he whispered, why would you show that? Why? She echoed, eyes burning. Because you lied to me too. About your money, your deals, everything. You used me, Brandon, so now everyone gets to see who you really are. Madeline felt the weight of humiliation crash over her in waves. The betrayal, the public mockery, the cruelty of being made into a punchline. Her breathing hitched. The baby kicked painfully. Her hand flew to her belly. Sebastian saw it instantly. Madeline, sit down, breathe. But she couldn't breathe. Not with her marriage in ruins, her job at risk, her bank account frozen, and her heart split open by a stranger's video. And then, her vision blurred, and she felt her knees buckle. Madeline's legs gave out, but Sebastian caught her before she hit the floor. His arms were firm, steady, like something in her world finally stopped collapsing. He lowered her gently onto the hallway bench, Chloe scrambling to hold her mother's hand. Mom, breathe. Please breathe, Chloe whispered, tears threatening. Sebastian crouched in front of Madeline, his voice low but commanding. Focus on my voice. Slow breaths. He placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. She clung to the steadiness in his tone. Jasmine, suddenly aware of how far she'd gone, stepped back. I didn't mean to. She just needed to know. Sebastian stood so quickly, Jasmine flinched. You humiliated a pregnant woman, he said, his voice tight and dangerous. You weaponized her pain for entertainment. He took a step closer. Let me make this perfectly clear. No one talks to my people like that. The hallway went silent. Madeline blinked. My people? The words shouldn't have meant anything, but they did. They made her feel seen in a way she hadn't felt in months. Brandon tried to intervene. Hey, man, you don't know her, this is between us. It became my business, Sebastian snapped. The moment you forged her signature, abandoned your family, and then let this woman degrade her. Brandon's mouth shut instantly. Sebastian turned to Jasmine. If you have any humanity left, you'll leave, right now. For the first time, Jasmine's confidence cracked. She swallowed, looked at Madeline with something almost like remorse, then back toward the stairwell. This wasn't supposed to happen, she murmured. I just wanted him to pay for lying to me. Then deal with him, Sebastian said coldly, not her. Jasmine turned and disappeared down the stairs. Chloe wiped Madeline's forehead gently. Mom, you okay? Madeline nodded weakly, though everything inside her felt fragile. I'm all right, baby. But Sebastian didn't buy it. You need rest, he said, and water, and you need to stay away from stress like this. His jaw tightened. If anything had happened to you or the baby, he didn't finish. He didn't need to. Madeline tried to sit up straighter. I'll be fine. I always am. Sebastian met her eyes with a depth that made her chest ache. You don't have to be. Not alone. The words hit her harder than Jasmine's video. Not alone. A foreign concept. A terrifying hope. Before she could respond, a loud knock thundered from the building's front entrance below. 3 more. Urgent, heavy. Brandon's face drained of color. Chloe whispered, "Mom, are they here for Dad?" Madeline clutched her belly as another knock shook the stairwell. And then, a voice called up the stairs, firm and official. "Madeline Carter, we need to speak with you immediately." Madeline froze at the sound of her name echoing up the stairwell. For one terrified second, she feared the officers believed she was involved in Brandon's forged loan. But when two uniformed officers reached the liaison, one of them lifted a hand gently. "Miss Carter," he said, "we're here to inform you that you're listed as a potential victim of financial identity fraud. We need a statement from you tomorrow morning." A weight lifted off her chest. She nodded weakly. "Yes, I'll cooperate fully." The officers glanced at Brandon, who tried to shrink into the wall, and then left with a stern warning for him to turn himself in. When their footsteps faded, the hallway sagged with exhaustion. Sebastian helped Madeline to her feet. "You need rest," he said again, more firmly this time. "Tomorrow is important. You can't walk into that meeting looking defeated." "But I am defeated," she whispered. He shook his head. "No, you're exhausted. Those are not the same." The next morning, everything changed. Sebastian sent a car to pick her up, a sleek black sedan that glided to the curb outside her building. Chloe watched proudly from the window as Madeline stepped inside. For the first time in months, she felt cared for. At Hayes Media Group, she was ushered into a private office where a wardrobe consultant waited with a simple, elegant navy dress, a soft wool coat, and low heels that didn't strain her swollen feet. Nothing flashy, just clean, graceful, and strong. "You're presenting to executives today," the consultant said. "You need to feel like one." Madeline stared at her reflection. No makeup, just a touch of warmth to her skin, no elaborate styling, just her hair smoothed into soft waves, but she looked capable, present, awake, like someone who deserved to be seen. She touched her belly gently. "We're okay," she whispered. "We're going to be okay." When she stepped into the hallway, Sebastian stood there waiting. His eyes lingered on her for a moment, not with admiration, but recognition. "That's the woman who's going to lead the Plaza project," he said. Madeline felt her throat tighten. "I don't know if I can." He stepped closer. "You already have. You've been leading your life through storms most people wouldn't survive." His voice lowered. "All this is just catching up to the truth of who you already are." Her heart stumbled at the sincerity. He opened the elevator door for her. "Your supervisor is expecting you." She inhaled, bracing herself. But as the elevator descended, her phone buzzed. A message. From Brandon. And it read, "We're not done. You owe me more than you think." Madeline felt the blood drain from her face. The elevator doors opened, and her supervisor was standing there, arms crossed, waiting. Madeline stepped out of the elevator, clutching her phone so tightly her knuckles whitened. Brandon's message echoed in her mind like a threat she wasn't ready to unpack. But before she could gather her thoughts, her supervisor, Mr. Dalton, gestured her inside with a tight, unreadable expression. "Close the door, Madeline." Her stomach twisted. She obeyed. For the first 10 minutes, he spoke about her recent performance issues, her absences, her late submissions. Words delivered without compassion, without context, without acknowledgement of the life she was juggling alone. She sat still, absorbing every blow in silence, her heartbeat thudding against her ribs. "And now," Mr. Dalton continued, "your involvement with senior leadership, namely Mr. Hayes, has raised concerns." Madeline blinked. "My involvement?" Dalton leaned back. "He's taken a sudden interest in your career. That tends to raise questions." Her pulse quickened. "I didn't ask him for anything." "I know," Dalton said, "but others assume you did." That sentence stung more than the others combined, as if her competence could never speak louder than rumors. As if the only explanation for a woman being noticed was that she must have asked for it. She opened her mouth to defend herself, but a knock interrupted them. Sebastian stepped inside. Dalton stood abruptly. "Mr. Hayes, sir, this is a private meeting." "Good," Sebastian replied coolly. "Then I'm in the right place." He took a seat beside Madeline without asking. Dalton's face paled. "I want it noted," Sebastian said, "that Miss Carter has been carrying your department for months. She is leading the Plaza Hotel project, effective immediately. Any disciplinary action against her will go through me." Dalton swallowed. "Yes, sir." Madeline sat frozen, protected, seen, but also terrified of how this would follow her. After the meeting, as they stepped into the hallway, Sebastian said quietly, "You didn't deserve any of that." She breathed out shakily, "Thank you." But they weren't alone. Across the lobby, leaning against the wall like a storm waiting to break, stood Brandon. His eyes locked onto Sebastian's hand, resting lightly on Madeline's arm. Something dark flashed across his face. Jealousy, rage, realization. He pushed off the wall and strode toward them. "So this is why you don't want me back," he hissed. "The CEO? Really, Mads? That's your next move?" Madeline froze. Sebastian stepped in front of her, towering. "Back away," he said. But Brandon didn't back away. He laughed, a brittle, unhinged sound. "Unbelievable. You're pregnant with my child, and you're parading around with him like some—" Madeline cut him off, voice shaking. "Don't finish that sentence." Brandon's smile twisted. "You think you can replace me? You think he can protect you from everything I know?" Sebastian's jaw clenched. "This conversation is over." But Brandon leaned in, voice low, poisonous. "Not until she hears what I found in the mail." Something she forgot. Madeline stiffened. "What mail?" she whispered. Brandon held up a sealed envelope. "You should have told me sooner, Mads," he said, "because this changes everything." Brandon dangled the unopened envelope between two fingers, enjoying the tension he created, the same way he once enjoyed dangling promises he never kept. Madeline's breath hitched, her mind racing through every possible nightmare. Another forged document, another debt, another trap. "What's inside?" she asked quietly. Brandon smirked. "Something you should have told me. Something about the baby." Sebastian stepped forward. "Hand it over." But before Brandon could respond, a small voice cut through the air like a blade. "No." Everyone turned. Chloe stood there, back straight, chin lifted, eyes blazing with a fire far too old for her 8 years. Milo peeked from under her arm, sensing the storm. "You don't get to scare my mom anymore," she said. Brandon blinked. "Chloe, sweetheart, don't call me that." Her voice cracked not from weakness, but from holding in months of pain. "You left us. You didn't come to my school play. You didn't call on my birthday. You didn't care." Brandon's face tightened. "It wasn't like that. It was exactly like that." She took a step closer, her small hands trembling but brave. "You only come back when you need something. Mom isn't a recycling bin you throw things into and dig through when you want them back." The words hit harder than any adult's accusation. Even Sebastian's shoulders stiffened at the impact. Madeline felt tears burning her eyes, not from hurt, but from the raw truth her daughter had just spoken aloud. Chloe was her mirror, her courage, her childhood lost too early. Brandon tried to touch her shoulder. "Chloe, I made mistakes, but I'm still your father." She stepped back. Fathers stay, they don't run. Silence. Even the lobby around them seemed to pause. Sebastian knelt beside Chloe, placing a steady hand on her back, quiet support, nothing more. "You're very brave," he murmured. Chloe's voice wavered now. "I just want Mom to be safe." Madeline's heart cracked open at the sight of her daughter defending her like a tiny warrior. She pulled Chloe close, breathing in her hair. "I'm safe, baby. I promise." Brandon's jaw clenched as his gaze jumped from Sebastian to Madeline to the envelope in his hand. "This isn't over," he muttered. "You're all acting like I'm the enemy." "You made yourself the enemy," Chloe whispered. Brandon swallowed hard. For the first time, his confidence faltered not from financial ruin, but from the realization his child no longer saw him as someone to run toward, only away from. He shoved the envelope toward Madeline. "Fine, take it." She hesitated, then took it. Chloe stared at it in fear. "Mom, don't open it." Madeline exhaled slowly and slid a thumb under the seal. Just as a security guard rushed toward them, shouting Sebastian's name. The security guard hurried toward them, slightly out of breath. "Mr. Hayes, we have a situation. It concerns Miss Carter's file." His tone was urgent, eyes flicking toward the envelope in Madeline's hand. Sebastian's expression hardened. "What kind of situation?" The guard lowered his voice. "There's a lien filed under her name connected to a business loan. It triggered an alert because it conflicts with internal employment records. Our legal department flagged it." Madeline felt the ground sway beneath her feet. A lien? But she hadn't. Her breath trembled as she unfolded the envelope Brandon had handed her minutes earlier. Inside was a notice stamped in bold red ink. Final warning. Payment required immediately. Borrower, Madeline Carter. Cosigner, Brandon Carter. Amount due, $15,000. Collateral. Household assets. Collateral. Her baby's crib. Chloe's laptop for school. Basic furniture. Even her car, the old Toyota, she relied on for doctor appointments. A sharp, icy fear spiraled through her chest. No, she whispered. This can't be real. I didn't sign anything. I never agreed to a business loan. Sebastian took the document from her hands, scanning the forged signature. This is sloppy work, he muttered. He didn't even match your handwriting. Brandon's jaw tightened. Look, it wasn't supposed to go this far. I just needed a little time. Jasmine said. Don't you dare blame Jasmine for this, Madeline snapped, her voice rising for the first time. You stole my identity. You stole my safety. Chloe clung to her side. Mom, what's a lien? Madeline swallowed painfully. It means they can take our things. All of them. Brandon raised his hands defensively. It's temporary. I'll fix it. You can't fix anything, Sebastian said sharply. You forged her name on a legal document. That's a felony. Brandon's facade finally cracked. He stepped closer, lowering his voice to a desperate whisper. Madeline, please. I didn't think they'd come after you. I thought I could pay it off before anyone noticed. But you didn't, she said. And now my children are at risk. Sebastian turned to the guard. Have legal prepare an emergency response. I want this lien investigated immediately. Yes, sir. Madeline felt her legs weaken again. Sebastian, what if they take everything? What if we lose our home? He rested a steady hand on her back. I won't let that happen. But before she could breathe, Brandon reached into his jacket, panic twisting his features. There's something else I need to tell you. Something worse. Madeline's blood ran cold. What could possibly be worse than this? Brandon's voice cracked. That loan? It wasn't the only thing I put in your name. Madeline staggered back, gripping her belly. And then? Sebastian's phone buzzed with a notification that made his face go pale. Sebastian's phone buzzed sharply. He glanced at the screen and his expression shifted from controlled concern to something dark, sharp, and dangerous. The kind of expression that warned storms were coming. Madeline steadied herself. What happened? Sebastian looked at her gently first, then at Brandon with ice in his eyes. My legal department just sent me confirmation. 2 additional accounts were opened under Madeline's name. His voice grew lower. And both are tied to fraudulent withdrawals. Madeline felt the world tilt. No, I didn't open anything. I know, Sebastian said, but the law won't know until we prove it. Brandon took a shaky step back. Sebastian, man, listen, this is blown way out of proportion. I can explain everything. You're going to explain it, Sebastian snapped, but not to me. He tapped his phone. Within seconds, 2 men in tailored suits, Hayes Media legal counsel, appeared at the far end of the lobby, walking with purpose. Miss Carter, one said, we're here to assist you immediately. Mr. Hayes briefed us on the situation. Madeline stared. Hayes Media wasn't just a company, it was a powerhouse. Their legal team had flattened corporations twice their size, and now they were standing for her. Is this really necessary? Brandon stammered. You're making it look worse. Sebastian stepped in front of Madeline protectively. You forged her name, repeatedly. You put her unborn child at legal and financial risk. You stole from her, and you threatened her. I didn't threaten. You implied she owed you, Sebastian cut in coldly. That's intimidation. Brandon's face reddened. She's my wife. Ex-wife, Madeline whispered. And I don't owe you anything anymore. The legal team moved in swiftly, scanning the documents Madeline held. We'll begin the emergency injunction, one said. We'll freeze anything tied to fraudulent activity, and we'll ensure Miss Carter is protected before debt collectors escalate. Madeline's breath trembled. For the first time in months, someone wasn't just listening, they were fighting for her. Brandon saw it too. You're siding with her? He shouted at Sebastian. Over me? Sebastian's expression hardened. She's the only one here worth protecting. Brandon looked around wildly, like all exits had closed. This wasn't supposed to happen, he muttered. She wasn't supposed to have help. Madeline felt a chill. What do you mean? Brandon's eyes flicked toward her belly, then toward Chloe. I had a plan, a way to fix everything, and you just ruined it. Sebastian stepped forward. What plan? Brandon shook his head. Too late now. The legal team began ushering Madeline toward a conference room for safety, but before she moved, Sebastian lightly touched her arm. You're safe now, he murmured. I promise you that. But Madeline barely heard him, because Brandon, defeated, furious, unraveling, whispered something that froze her blood. You should check the nursery. Madeline's breath stopped. Chloe's face went white. The nursery. Madeline couldn't breathe when Brandon said it. 1,000 terrible images flashed through her mind: broken furniture, missing items, something dangerous left behind. But before her panic could spiral, Sebastian placed both hands gently on her shoulders. Madeline, look at me, he said firmly. You are safe. Your children are safe. Whatever he meant, we'll deal with it together. She nodded, clinging to the steadiness in his voice. The legal team escorted Brandon away for questioning, leaving the air strangely quiet. Too quiet. By late afternoon, after hours of statements, paperwork, and emergency filings, Madeline felt drained but safer. The fraudulent accounts were frozen. The lien was temporarily blocked. The police would search her apartment for whatever Brandon hinted at, but she still had to face something just as terrifying. The Plaza Hotel gala. Her first major assignment, her chance to secure her entire future. When she returned to Hayes Media, a stylist waited with a simple but breathtaking evening look. A fitted black maternity gown with a satin drape, chosen because it honored both her strength and her pregnancy. Her hair was swept into soft curls. Her makeup was natural but luminous. She stared at herself in the mirror. She didn't look broken. She didn't look abandoned. She didn't look afraid. She looked powerful. Chloe, sitting nearby with her sketchbook, gasped. Mom, you look like those queens in my fairy tale books. Madeline smiled, eyes glassy. Oh, sweetheart, I just look like myself again. When she stepped into the lobby, Sebastian was waiting at the bottom of the grand staircase. He turned and froze. He had seen elegance before. He spent his life surrounded by polished executives, models, heiresses, but there was something different in the way he looked at Madeline. Something like recognition of a woman who had survived a storm and still managed to rise. You're stunning, he said, voice low. And strong. And ready. Madeline felt warmth rise to her cheeks. I hope so. You don't need to hope, Sebastian replied. Tonight, you lead. They arrived at the Plaza together, stepping into the golden-lit ballroom where New York's elite mingled beneath crystal chandeliers. The ceiling shimmered. The music swelled. Cameras flashed like tiny lightning bolts. Madeline took a breath. This was her world now. Not Brandon's. Not Jasmine's. Hers. But just as she stepped deeper into the ballroom, a familiar, icy voice drifted through the crowd. Well, look who decided to show up. Madeline turned. Jasmine stood there, dressed in red silk, lips curled in a knowing smile. And beside her, wearing a borrowed tux and an expression of smug confidence, was someone she never expected to see allowed inside the Plaza tonight. Brandon. For a moment, the ballroom froze around her. The music, the murmured conversations, the glitter of champagne flutes, all of it dulled under the shock of Brandon standing inside the Plaza, as if he belonged there. His tux didn't fit quite right, and the smug tilt of his chin only made him look more out of place among New York's elite. How did you even get in here? Madeline whispered. Brandon smirked. Connections. Not everyone's abandoned me. Jasmine looped her arm through his. We were invited, she added, though her voice wavered, betraying insecurity beneath the glamour. Investors like Brandon are always welcome. A nearby guest overheard and raised a brow. Investors? The word hung in the air, fragile as glass. Sebastian stepped forward, calm but ice-edged. Interesting claim, considering Mr. Carter is currently under investigation for financial fraud. A gasp rippled through the crowd. Brandon stiffened. You can't say that here. I can, Sebastian replied, and I will, because you put your ex-wife and her children at legal risk. More guests turned, phones lifted discreetly, whispers multiplied like wildfire. Jasmine's smile cracked. Brandon, is he telling the truth? Brandon grabbed her arm. Don't listen to him. He wants to ruin me. Sebastian ignored him and raised his voice slightly, controlled but commanding. Ladies and gentlemen, if you've had any recent financial dealings with Brandon Carter, I advise you to contact your banks immediately. Now the crowd really stirred curiosity, judgment, fascination swirling under crystal chandeliers. A few wealthy donors stepped back from Brandon, subtly distancing themselves. Jasmine yanked her arm free. Did you use my money too? Brandon's jaw clenched. Jasmine, not now. Answer me. He didn't. He couldn't. Madeline stood in silence, her hands protectively cupping her belly. She didn't need revenge. The truth was doing the work for her. Sebastian placed a steady hand at her back. You don't have to stay for this. But she lifted her chin. No, I want to. Because for the first time, she wasn't the one being humiliated. Brandon was. And the entire room was watching. A man in a navy suit approached the group, offering Sebastian a polite nod. Mr. Hayes, sir. The documents you requested. Brandon's face drained as the man handed Sebastian a folder. Sebastian opened it, then addressed the surrounding guests, voice ringing clear. In addition to multiple fraudulent accounts, we've confirmed the loan in Madeline Carter's name was used to cover luxury expenses for both Brandon and Miss Vale. Jasmine reeled back as if slapped. You said that money was for a business. It was, Brandon snapped. No, Sebastian replied. It paid for hotel suites, jewelry, and a watch you posted online last month. Phones snapped photos. Jasmine stepped away from Brandon, shaking her head. You're done, she whispered. You're actually done. Brandon's eyes darted wildly to Madeline, to Sebastian, to the crowd closing in. Then, through clenched teeth, he hissed. This isn't over. I still have leverage. Madeline frowned. What leverage? Brandon lifted his gaze, eyes burning. You really haven't opened the second envelope yet, have you? Madeline felt her breath hitch. Sebastian grabbed her hand just as Brandon lunged. Brandon lunged, but he never reached Madeline. Security intercepted him mid-stride, gripping his arms and pulling him back with trained precision. The ballroom gasped as the scene unfolded, New York's most powerful donors witnessing a man unravel in real time beneath the chandeliers of the Plaza. Let me go, Brandon shouted, thrashing as cameras caught every second. She's lying. They're all lying. But the room had already turned against him. Every face was cold now. Investors whispered. Donors frowned. Socialites stepped away with disgust, their stilettos clicking like tiny hammers, driving nails into the coffin of Brandon's reputation. Jasmine stared at him, as though seeing him for the first time, her expression a mixture of fear and humiliation. You told me you had everything under control, she whispered. He jerked toward her. You used me. You used me first, she snapped. And everyone sees it now. Sebastian stepped between Madeline and the chaos, positioning himself like a shield. His voice cut through the noise with quiet dominance. That's enough. Security tightened their grip on Brandon, who was panting, sweating, wild-eyed. You think you've won? He spat at Madeline. You think you're better than me now because you've got him? Madeline didn't flinch. No, Brandon, I'm better because I stopped needing you. The words landed like a strike. Even Sebastian's expression softened with something like respect. Brandon's desperation turned frantic. You can't take everything from me. The loan, those accounts, they'll trace back to her eventually. No, Sebastian replied, pulling a document from his inside pocket. Because we already proved the handwriting is fraudulent, and the bank traced the applications to your IP address. The crowd murmured louder. Brandon shook his head violently. You're lying. You're all... A voice boomed behind them. Brandon Carter? You're under arrest for identity fraud, forgery, and financial coercion. 2 NYPD officers stepped forward, presenting cuffs. Gasps rippled through the room as Brandon went pale. No, you can't arrest me here. But they could. And they did. Guests raised their phones. Flashes burst like fireworks as Brandon, once obsessed with luxury and appearances, was escorted out of the ballroom, in handcuffs, his tie crooked, his facade shattered. As he was dragged past Madeline, he snarled, You ruined my life. She met his gaze steadily. No, Brandon, you ruined your own. Jasmine turned away, disgusted, disappearing into the crowd. When the officers pushed open the gilded doors to take Brandon out, a hush fell over the room. Sebastian exhaled. It's over. But Madeline shook her head slowly, gripping her belly. No, she whispered. There's still the second envelope. Sebastian stiffened. Then we open it, he said. Together. Madeline unfolded the flap. and her eyes widened in shock. Madeline stared at the document inside the second envelope. Her pulse slowed, then steadied as the truth settled deep in her bones. It wasn't another loan. It wasn't another debt. It wasn't another trap. It was proof of paternity. Not Brandon's, Sebastian's. Her fingers trembled. This can't be right. Sebastian gently took the paper, scanning it with trained calm. It's a DNA test, signed, dated, and submitted 5 months ago. Madeline's brows knitted in confusion. But how? It's fake, Sebastian said softly, turning to face her. Brandon forged this too. He wanted leverage. If he could plant doubt, he thought he could control you again. Madeline exhaled shakily, the weight of it all lifting and crashing at the same time. Why would he do that? Because he knew he was losing you long before he left, Sebastian answered. Some men destroy what they can't own. Around them, the ballroom had begun to return to its glittering rhythm. Though many eyes still lingered on Madeline, this woman who had walked through fire and somehow emerged standing taller than before. Chloe ran toward her, wrapping her arms around her waist. Mom, is everything okay? Madeline knelt, cupping her daughter's face. Yes, she breathed. We're finally okay. Sebastian stood a few feet away, waiting, not assuming, not pushing, simply present. A steady anchor in a night full of storms. When Madeline looked up at him, she saw not a CEO, not a rescuer, but someone who had quietly chosen to stand beside her when the world tried to break her. He extended a hand. Ready to go home? She placed her hand in his. Yes, but this time, to a home that's ours. Not to someone's shadow. They walked out of the plaza together, Sebastian carrying her coat, Chloe holding her mother's other hand, the cold Manhattan air greeting them like a clean slate. Outside, the city glittered. A new life waited, not because someone handed it to her, but because she survived long enough to claim it. Sebastian helped her into the car, his touch gentle. Madeline, he said quietly, I don't want to rush anything, but when the time is right, I'd like to be part of your family. If you'll let me. Her throat tightened. You already are. Chloe grinned from the back seat. I was wondering when you'd say it. For the first time in a long time, Madeline laughed whole, warm, free. As the car pulled away from the plaza, she rested her hand on her belly and whispered to the baby, We made it. Then she leaned back, letting the city lights wash over her. Because sometimes life doesn't give you a miracle. Sometimes you become your own. And just like that, our story closes its final chapter. If you're still here with me right now, my friend, it means something in this journey touched a quiet place inside you. So let's take a breath together and look at what this story really taught us, not just about Madeline, but about life, resilience, and the strength we forget we carry. Life will break you open in ways you never expect, but as Marcus Aurelius wrote, the impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way. Madeline didn't rise because the world was kind. She rose because she refused to stay where she was broken. Her pain became her direction. Her setbacks became her foundation. And her courage built a new life where fear used to live. Maybe tonight you needed that reminder too. That you are allowed to start again. That your worth is not defined by who walked away, but by who you become after they leave. In the end, healing is not loud. It's a quiet decision you make every day. I deserve better. If this story stayed with you, if it gave you a little strength, a little clarity, or even a little comfort, then don't let it end here. Like the video, share it with someone who might need it, and subscribe so you never walk these journeys alone. We're building something here, a place where stories heal, where pain transforms, and where you are always understood. Stay with us. Your next chapter is waiting.